All right, guys, so up to this point, we've been using the CDN. We just include the script tag and we're ready to go. And you can do that for small projects. You can do it for development and testing. But if we go to tailwindcss.com and go to get started, in addition to the play CDN, which is what we've been using, there's other methods as well. And you can see right here, it says that this isn't the best choice for production. So one way to do it is by installing Tailwind as a post-CSS plugin. And this is a good option if you're using a build tool like Webpack or Rollup or Vite, if you're creating a JavaScript application or something. But if you're just building like a Tailwind website, maybe you have a little bit of functionality, you're not using a build tool or a framework or anything, then the Tailwind CLI is the way to go. So that's what we're going to be using in our website projects. And what I want to do right now is set up an environment that we can use for future projects. And I already have this uploaded on GitHub, so you could just clone this if you want, the simple Tailwind starter. But I would definitely recommend that you go through this and recreate this with me so you understand exactly what's going on. All right, and it's not very difficult. So we have some steps here we're going to follow, but we are going to customize it a little bit. So let's, first thing we should do is just create a project folder. So I'm going to create it on my desktop, and I'm going to call it Tailwind. What did I call this? Simple Tailwind starter. Okay, and the idea is that we can just duplicate this folder when we're done and create new projects. So let's open this up. Now you do need your terminal, so you could right click, and I think on Windows you can right click and open your command prompt, or you can drag it down to the terminal like this. You just want to make sure you're in the folder. But what I'm going to do is actually open it with VS Code. So if you're using VS Code, you have an integrated terminal, and that's what I'm going to be using. All right, so now you can see that I have the folder open on the side here, and if I do a command or control tilde, it'll open the terminal in that folder. All right, and then the very first thing we want to do here is run npm. So that's the Node Package Manager. So you do need Node.js installed. If you don't have it on your machine, just go to nodejs.org and download and install it. It's really easy. And we can say npm init, and I'm going to add on the -y flag. And what this is going to do is create a package.json file, which is basically a manifest with some information. If we install any dependencies such as Tailwind, it'll show in here as well. And I know that a lot of you guys already know this stuff, but I'm trying to explain everything step by step for the people that don't know it. Okay, so next thing we want to do, let's open up that page, and we'll just make it smaller. So we need to install Tailwind with npm. So let's come down here in the terminal and we'll say npm install, or I, -uppercase D, because we're installing it as a dev dependency. It's not needed for a production environment. And then Tailwind CSS. Make sure you do CSS, not just Tailwind. That's something that I used to screw up. Okay, so that installs it. It creates this node modules folder, and it also puts it right here in our dev dependencies. So next, it's telling us to run npx tailwind css init, and what this does is it creates a config file for us. Just like when we would do the script tags with the Tailwind config object, if we wanted to add colors or screen sizes or whatever, in this case, we're going to have a file to add that stuff. And we're using npx, we're just running it globally. So let's say npx tailwind css and init. And now you should get this tailwind.config file, and you'll have this by default. All right, so let's scroll down here. Now it's telling us to put this string in here in the content array where it says /source and then / some asterisks, HTML.js. What this is saying is to look in a source folder for any HTML or JavaScript files that have Tailwind classes. Now, we're going to be a little bit more simple. I'm not going to have a source folder. We're just going to put everything in the root. So in content, all we have to do is a /, meaning we're looking in the current directory, the root, and then *.html. So we're basically going to watch for any Tailwind classes in any HTML file in the root. All right, and then we can save that. Now we need to create an input CSS file. Right here, they have it in the source folder, but we're going to create it right in the root. So input CSS, you could call this whatever, but I'm going to call it input. And then there's 3 directives, this at Tailwind, these are called directives. And this basically just brings in the main parts of Tailwind, the base, the components, and the utilities. Now you might see some squiggly lines on the directives, and if you do see that, then you can just install the Post CSS extension. So this right here, Post CSS language support, and that should go away. All right, and then if we keep going down here, we can close up Input CSS. Now it's telling us to run Tailwind and then the -i flag, so input, and then the input file, so basically specify where that input file is. Here it's in a source folder, but ours is just right in the root. And then they're saying to define the output with -o, and then they're saying put it in a dist folder and an output CSS file, and then constantly watch the input and compile into the output. Now, instead of just running this in the terminal every time, we're going to create what are called NPM scripts. So in our package.json, you'll see there's an area for scripts. So what we'll do is create a script called, let's call it build. And let's delete this stuff here. We don't need that. All right, and we want to run Tailwind, so Tailwind CSS, which we have installed as a dev dependency. And then we want to specify the input, so -i, and then /input.css. Okay, so that's the input, and then we want to define the output, so -o, and then this could be anywhere. You could call the file anything. You could put it in any folder. What I'm going to do is put it in a CSS folder and call it style.css. And ultimately, that's what we want to include in our HTML file. All right, so I'm going to copy this down. And then the second one, I'm just going to add on --watch, because this will keep watching it. This is what we run when we do our development. So I'm going to change the script name to watch. So build will just run it once and compile it. Watch will keep watching it and keep compiling it. So let's save that. And now I'm going to open up the sidebar here, because you'll see that when I run npm run build, which you should run as well, you'll see it's going to create a folder called CSS and then a style.css, because that's what I said in the script. All right, and you can see this is the Tailwind CSS file, so it has all this stuff in it. All right, and that's what we want to include in our HTML file, which we don't have yet. So let's create that, index.html. And let's just put a boilerplate in here. We want to make sure we include that style sheet. So let's add a link here to CSS/style CSS. And we'll just say simple Tailwind starter. And we'll just put, let's do an H1, and we'll put a Tailwind class of text-3XL, just so we can make sure that Tailwind is being used. And again, we'll just say Tailwind or simple Tailwind starter. It doesn't really matter what you put, but let's save that. And now we could build again, but let's do npm run watch, so it will constantly watch this file. Okay, and you'll see this right here, rebuilding, and every time you save, you'll see that, because it's constantly watching our index.html and our input CSS, and it's compiling it into here. All right, now if we want to open this file, you could open it right on your operating system, or you could use Live Server if you're using that with VS Code, and that's what I'm going to do. And you can see we have a larger text here, so we know that Tailwind is working. If I do like bg-red-100 save, and it just gets applied, and we don't have to reload because we're using Live Server. All right, so at the same time it's compiling here, and we're also using Live Server to watch the files. So let's go ahead and just get rid of that. And now basically we have an environment that we can just duplicate and then create our projects. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this down here now with Command or Control C. And anytime we want to use it, we just run npm run watch. Or if we just want to build it once, we can do npm run build. Now before we get into our mini projects, I do want to show you a couple other things. We can use in this input CSS file, we can use what are called functions and directives Tailwind at Tailwind is an example of a directive, but there's other ones as well. So in the next video, before we get on to our projects, I want to just talk about that for a little bit.